Developing, building, and perhaps maintaining the memorial, not the monument, Michael, the memorial
That's right.
to victims of communism, Canada Land of Refuge. By the way, that second half is often forgotten when you read the newspapers and see the media clippings. It's all about victims of communism. Even some of the journalists have the audacity of putting the title "Memorial to Communism." And I usually write to them explaining that our friends from the Jewish community are not building a memorial to Nazis, but to victims of Holocaust. Hence, we are building a memorial to victims of communism, not to communism. And they seem to be flabbergasted.
You're kidding.
So tonight, with your permission, I will tell you two brief stories, and then perhaps we'll open up for questions and answers after that, okay? If you, going through the first story, if I'm too graphic in terms of how I describe this, please forgive me. It's not my intention to disturb you, but it proves certain points. So first story. There was a small village outside of Kharkiv, where 3 kids used to go to a local school. And anyone in that village who knew them, they called them the 3 Musketeers. Regardless of the fact that one of them was actually a little girl, only 2 boys. But they were so connected and loved each other's companies that hardly day went by when they wouldn't be running around anywhere. And this was in the darkest days of Ottawa. They walked to school together. They've seen some other children suddenly dropping off and not coming to the school. And days went by, and they were struggling. They were hungry. So there was a little pond right next to the school where they usually went after school to fish. Not fish for fish, because there were none, but fish for little weed, anything that you can mention, okay? And this was almost a religious thing to them. And when they came to class was getting smaller and smaller. Kids were not coming. And one day, those 2 boys realized that their own 3rd musketeer did not come to school. And they were disturbed by it, and they didn't know what happened to her, and there was really no way of finding out. But they continued with the tradition. They actually went to that pond to fish. And they actually were struggling to fish something heavy. But they were actually successful in that fishing endeavor. And what they fished out was the head, an only head, of that 3rd musketeer. Because the rest of her body was eaten by her father and her mother because they were so hungry. And this was one of the examples of such a tremendous cannibalism that was going on. People were starving so horribly that they actually even went beyond the human dignity and ate their own child to survive. Now get this. In a Katyn forest during the Second World War, where the Soviet army invaded eastern part of Poland, they captured a large group of Polish officers. And within the Katyn forest, aside from Ostashkov and other places, there were prison camps for 17,000 of those officers. All of them being of Polish background, obviously, and that camp was managed by NKVD, and there was one person, and his name was Vasily Mikhailovich Wargin. Imagine this, that one NKVD soldier, an apparatchik, if you will, himself individually killed 7,000 of those officers, one by one. To save on bullets, he, from time to time, held two heads of officers together so he can kill both of them with one bullet. His revolver, a Russian army revolver, was getting so hot and coiled that he actually switched to the SS Nazi Walter pistol because it wouldn't jam and wasn't getting too hot, so he can be as efficient as possible and kill them one by one. And then in 1978, there was a group of Vietnamese boat people who were on the Chinese Sea, family of 7, the youngest child, she was 9 years old. That boat was invaded by the Chinese pirates, and rather than raping every single woman on the boat, they concentrated on the only one, on the youngest one. And 9 pirates raped that girl one by one. Once they were finished, they didn't kill the family, they let them go, but they actually chopped off every single limb of that wonderful young woman, that child, and threw it to the ocean. Now, sorry for being so graphic, I'm getting to the point. I have met the descendants of each and every family here in Canada. They are Canadians now. This memorial to victims of communism, Canada, land of refuge, is for them. And I will not rest until this memorial is completed, because when you read Ottawa Citizen or other newspapers, you'll never hear the stories of the brothers.
No.
Right?
Why not? Why aren't they doing this?
We'll get to that. Second story. 2 nights ago, I'm at the book launch of one of my, not close friend, but someone that I know. He is, it's a conflicting individuality, if you will. But I say, he was cancelled by the Prime Minister Paul Martin of Liberal Party. Oh, I didn't know that. I said, did you know that the long-term vision was actually abandoned by our city because our mayor went to the minister responsible for development of Ottawa and said, please, we the city are begging you not to build any more federal buildings in the downtown core because it's not environmentally responsible, and we also need to diversify assets of public servants away from downtown core to avoid the congestion and the need to build the tunnel. Did you hear that? No. So then we went back and forth for a few minutes, and then she says, forgive me, my head hurts. I can't answer, I can't ask you any more questions about it. But what I'm trying to paint for you here is that everything was going well with the development of the design for the memorial to victims of communism, as well as all the procedures that needed to be followed as they are followed by any other monument in conjunction with the National Capital Commission policy. Everything was going smoothly until Mr. Barry Podolsky, who in his interview with Ottawa Citizen on January 16th, when asked, who are your heroes, Barry Podolsky, answered, my heroes were Marx, Lenin, and Mao, but I grew out of it. I still had a leaning for anyone on the left. This person got involved, and because of his strong connections within the city, mobilized and energized those who think that this can be framed in a political discourse. And it's just horribly unfortunate that we're facing a federal election now because people are using us, the memorial, as a punching bag for the ongoing politics. I'll give you one example. We were talking about the Syrian refugees, right? It's a trouble. It's a problem for all of us here, and especially in Europe. One thing that was done so well that comes to mind is the self-energizing of Canadian communities back in the 1970s when we actually lifted the Vietnamese vote. That process began in June of 1979, and it was initiated by Marion Dewar, Mayor of Ottawa, mother of Mr. Paul Dewar of NDP, who is one of the most vocal opponents of that memorial.
Oh, really?
So I said to Paul, we are building this memorial to say thank you and to commemorate people like your mom. She was instrumental in beginning Project 4,000. Okay? We were supposed to resettle 4,000 Vietnamese families back then. We ended up with 40,000. Right? It was a huge success. So I said to him, why would you deny the legacy of your own family? Your own mother was a shining example of what the beautiful Canadian mosaic is all about. And look, I'm grateful, Michael, to you for inviting us here. The one segment, the only thing that I want you to take away today, the major one, is the most important component of the memorial to victims of communism. And that component, we call it a wall of remembrance. Wall of remembrance is dedicated to anyone who was generous enough to give $1,000 donation, which, by the way, after income tax deductions, only $666. If you divide it by 2 spouses, that's only $300. If you divide it by 365 days in a year, it's $1. Can we start with $1 each tonight and continue? It's a simple proposition. But the mosaic of Wall of Remembrance is about recognizing that communists, ever since the beginning of the Bolshevik Revolution, managed to kill 100 million people globally. And they continue killing them in some parts of the world. I said, if we can find just 1,000 good-willing Canadians from coast to coast to coast, and if they were generous enough to make that donation, 1,000 being a tiny percentage of that 100 million, then what we will do is we will create similar experience to the experience that you can find in Washington, D.C. with the Vietnam War Memorial. That actually 1,000 names can be on the wall. You can come and touch that name. You can scribble and copy that name and take it back to Vancouver, Calgary, or whatever you came from. But not only that, once you're at the memorial, or if your child or grandchild is there, they can take a smartphone, scan the QR coding, type in Dąbrowska name, and see the story behind each and every contribution, and each and every name on the mosaic of names on the wall of remembrance. And the names there will be positioned in a random fashion. So the Ukrainian name can be right next to a Korean name. The Polish name can be next to Vietnamese. This would be the only exclusively Canadian project where the mosaic of different ethnic communities are coming together in one place. And it's also the only project where one organization like Tribute to Liberty puts together the stories, like those first 3 stories that I told you about, in one common unified place forever, for hundreds of years to come. I'm telling you, and one of my roles tonight is to ask for your generosity and also for you to become our ambassadors and go out and tell your friends that we are building in Ottawa, in Canada, such a unique project that it's so timely. If you look at KGB agent Vladimir Putin and what he does today, the communists are on the march again. They want to come back and restate what they've lost because of good people like Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher, John Paul II, and others. So I'm telling you, unless we bring this to Canadian psyche in a similar fashion to what people know about Holocaust, 1-2 generations from now, people will actually ask for the communism to be introduced in Canada as a legitimate way of thinking. And to that, we should say absolutely not, never. Okay? So with that, why don't I just open up some questions and answers. If there's anything on your mind that you'd like to ask me about the logistics of the memorial, about funding for the memorial, about where are we going with this, I'm all yours. But that's my speech for tonight.
I just have a question. You mentioned that site was originally indicated that it could be used for the victims of the Holocaust.
Correct.
When they rejected that site due to the reasons that you mentioned, how long afterwards did that site become actually thought of a site for this purpose?
Almost instantly.
Oh, okay.
There were only 2 organizations, if you will, that were in the running for some national commemoration, and one of them was Canadian Holocaust Memorial, because frankly we are the only Western capital that doesn't have the Holocaust Memorial. Every other city around the globe has one. And then we were obviously soliciting the government for rather prominent location for the memorial to victims of communism. So initially, and that's really true, the land that was designated for us was in the Garden of Provinces, because the Jewish community was designated to take the lawn, adjacent to the Supreme Court of Canada. But then when that's changed, and it was actually good for them because they made much larger project, right, vis-a-vis the War Museum, then suddenly we stepped into such a prominent place, a really pristine place. And by the way, not many people know this. The location of this memorial, positioning of it, it's not accidental. And I don't know if, Michael, if you want me to talk about specifically how
Sure.
the memorial looks like, but the idea is you enter that memorial, and you can actually see this on the brochures here. You enter the memorial from corner of Lion and Confederation Boulevard. Okay? So what you do, you're leading the archers of the Veterans Memorial, right? And the Veterans Memorial is really specifically for the veterans of the Second World War, but it's also for the First War. It's recognition of our veterans, basically. So you get into this as if you were entering the 20th century, okay? And John Paul II called the 20th century a century of tears because of Holocaust and communism. So you get into that memorial from that corner, and you look at the memory folds, okay? And I'll get to that in a second. But when you look to the left, okay, follow me here, can you imagine this? You see the facade of the National Library and Archives building. How many of you know that the facade of that building is identical to the facade of the Stasi East German Berlin building in which they actually persecuted and interrogated the East German opposition? It's identical. No, of course not. Of course not. No one in Ottawa building this building back in the 1960s would think, well, let's build a building that looks like the Stasi building. But the coincidence is such that when you look at this building and you look through the memory folds, these are the folds that you see in the brochure, okay? You really look at Canada's history and Canada's past. Because look, there's nothing better than our recognition of our history than our library and archives, right? So the artist that won the design competition suggested the following. If you were to take all 100 million victims, and if you will illustrate each and every victim by a tiny pixel of the size of a pinky fingernail, that lot, 5,000 square meters, is too small to fit all 100 million pixels in it. So he said, why don't we fold them up so we can shrink that memory, if you will, and have everyone, 100 million of them, by doing the memory fold. So when you look to the left, when you enter that memorial, you look at the Stasi building, if you will, you look at all of the 100 million people who perished, and that's your past. But you're resting against something that we call the Bridge of Hope. Because the Bridge of Hope is here. This is home, Canada. Finally, we are at peace, knowing that we can live in this beautiful democratic country with no fear. However, and I know I may be preaching too much right now, but
Okay.
look, one common thing that unifies us, no matter if you're Ukrainian, Pole, or Korean, or Vietnamese, Chinese, majority of communist dictators died in peace, unpunished. So then, in terms of rule of law, there was no one who was persecuted for their own actions. Name it, Stalin, Beria, Pol Pot, Mao, whoever. So then, to be in this location, at the Bridge of Hope, when you're resting on our symbol of justice, Supreme Court of Canada, and also to have the Justice Building of the federal buildings behind you, that tells you, I'm looking at the past, I recognize my fallen heroes on the memory folds, but I'm free. I am free at last in a democratic country where rule of law is above all. And at least I have with this memorial a place for commemorations, and I'm getting that at least symbolic justice by having a Holodomor commemorations day in November when all this place is lit with yellow and blue colors for the number of days of the community celebrating those days. And I'm also having an experience where I can teach my children and grandchildren what the story of my journey to Canada was all about, or whose name I want to commemorate as a result of my generosity. Good enough, Michael? Good enough?
Yeah.
Okay.
More than
Question, sorry. If I go too long, just stop me, all right?
Well, where are we at now? Right now, what's happening? This has been in the works for a while.
Yeah.
There's progress.
So I know that
When are you going to pour the first ton of concrete?
you just asked the toughest question of them all. Look, we went through the process of design competition, a national process, including some international artists. I was one of the jurors, and we elected a winning team in August of last year. Last December, that winning team, the Abstract Studio from Toronto, that has offices in New York and in Europe, was announced as a winning team. Okay, so it's been less than a year since we elected the winner. And then because of the scale and importance of this pristine place, we had to do plenty of readjustments. One, budgetary ones. Two, in the old brochure, the larger brochure, you see the picture of victims of Communism. These are the soldiers that were found. But imagine if you are a public servant who works in the buildings adjacent to that memorial, would you like to see dead corpses every single day of the week when you get to work? Not necessarily. So there were plenty of adjustments and changes that we needed to execute. Today, that image on London Post, that's the image of Canada, a land of refuge. There'll be about 250 pictures of immigrants to Canada.
Is that what's going to be on
Yeah.
these poles?
Yeah. So So now we are entering the phase where we, you and I, are saying to our fellow Canadians, this is our thank you for allowing us to be in the safety and prosperity of this country. And those 250 faces will be random faces of different ethnic communities coming together again. Right? So what I'm saying to you is that in the process of design of this memorial, we're getting to a final stages when I think in about early, maybe mid-November, there'll be a last meeting of National Capital Commission approving the design as it goes forward.
You think that will happen?
I know it will happen. Look, another important and perhaps not widely publicized thing is that I've met with all leaders of national parties. I have letters of support from each and every one of them.
From all three?
Now,
There's no danger that one of them.
If one's elected,
Yeah, that's my question. What happens if,
we
let's say,
don't-
NDP ends up
yeah.
If we have
in
a
the
change in government.
If we have a change in
government after the
In all of
election?
this, I think there's a serious issue. First of all, I have to start off by saying I support the concept of it, I support the concept of land of refuge. I think this is an excellent idea that should be done. But, it's a very big but. This monument
Memorial.
has, sorry, memorial,
Memorial.
has become highly politicized by our current government to the point where the government and some of the supporters are basically lying and insulting. First of all, the outright lie. Paul Dewar never said he didn't support the monument. Paul Dewar said he didn't support the process by which it came to happen in Detroit. There's a very important difference there. What you were saying is an outright lie, he didn't support it. And that comes from the conservative government.
no.
Well,
Okay. We may disagree, but look, I know.
but no,
Sure.
there are a lot of other things that will come into this
Okay.
that make this critical in terms of the monument.
Okay.
First of all, whenever the government has dealt with the monument, the government has done nothing to get support from the other parties, which is important.
One, you have no clue how many public consultations Tribute to Liberty and National Capital Commission have exercised prior to Paul Dewar getting involved. You have no clue that we actually held 3 different distinctive public consultations. You have also no clue that memorial was mentioned in a speech from the throne by Governor General twice with the support of all opposition parties. You also have no clue that when I speak about Paul Dewar, I'm not offending him personally like you just did, Pierre Polivier. I'm saying that his claims against stating the lack of transparency and the fact that government did not consult the city are just simply not true. I'll give you another example. This piece of land technically belongs to Public Works. It's a federal land. Our mayor and city of Ottawa and the councillors have no say in what is being built on federal land. If they speak against it, they can only voice their concerns in a political way, as they have exercised. No federal government ever goes and consults the city councillors in terms of building a national memorials, monuments, of federal buildings for that matter. I'll give you another example on which you have no clue. It's not Pierre Polivier. It was John Baird, the minister responsible for the Ottawa, that was instrumental in assuming certain things and progressing them. Pierre Polivier became a minister responsible for our region only when John Baird resigned. So what you're repeating today, my dear friend, are really the allegations and all the things that you've read from Ottawa Citizen without having a true knowledge about what went behind the scenes. One of the public consultations was really with people who were most affected. We have invited individuals who are the victims of communism. And they told us about the gulags in Siberia and they told us about such a wonderful recognition of their own belonging here. Because when people say, this story is not a Canadian story, it's the story that happened somewhere else, it affects 8 million Canadians who came here or live here as a result of that evil system. Not only that, if you say, my dear friend, to me, this is not Canadian, then I'm telling you, go and face each and every veteran, a soldier who fought in Korea, because they went there to fight against communism. We are building a memorial to recognize their sacrifice and the graves in Korea of their own brothers in arms who were left behind. This is unbelievable. If it wasn't for the fact that people are using this as a toy in a political discourse before the election, you wouldn't say what you're saying.
But I think there are two issues here. One, the last few things you spoke, yes, I agree with the concept of the monument, why it's there, and all the causes behind it. That's not an issue. I think it's an important issue. What I am trying to do is the way it's being done. In terms of politicization, the Conservatives have done as much, if not more, than other parties in politicizing it. And when we talk about consultations, I mean, when the mayor, who I don't necessarily support, stands up and says there was no consultation, I take it seriously.
But look, this is a conversation, okay? So look, mayor says that, but no one has an obligation to go and talk to him about it. Because it's not in the domain of the city. Two, I get that mayor was swayed by some influential individuals that are opposing that memorial and spoke publicly the way he did, which is rather unfortunate. But it's not for his worship to speak publicly about the memorial that it's not within the domain of the city.
I think there's a texture. I know I've been involved in putting up federal buildings in other parts of the country, and the result is very heavy consultation with local authorities. No matter what you do, even just alter it, it happens. And in this case, it's particularly important because just of this issue we're talking about. We need public support for this memorial. To reject or to say that you don't have any say in it because you're a mayor, because you this or you that, reduces the support and gets people's backs up. That to me is sort of.
So let me ask you just one question, okay?
What you have to do, we have to do is work on the angle of the support. And we're losing it.
Let me ask you just one question and we move to other people. When was the mayor, where was he, when this site was given to the Holocaust Memorial? Why didn't he object then? Why didn't he say that no one consulted him on the location for Holocaust Memorial? Why did he choose to remain silent on it? Can you answer
I
that?
have no idea, and to be honest, I don't care. He was on site. That's all that matters. He's not on site for this. Why is he not on site for this? And that's what we have to
So you know how you can answer that question for yourself.
answer it for me.
Well, I guess the priority of one subject was perceived by his political well-being in a different way than the memory of victims of communism. I guess that's
And what
my...
I'm saying is that should have been dealt with by the people, including the federal government, responsible in getting him on site before the announcement was made. Obviously, that was somehow done before the Holocaust Memorial was announced, and before it was moved on to 60.
No,
We
I
agree
think
to
it's
this-
because there was no concerted campaign against the Holocaust
Bravo.
Memorial, whereas against this memorial, there's absolutely no doubt. What was happening in the media is a few people were desperately working to sway public opinion, and you can see from what they were saying. They pretended it was the site or the size or whatever, but it was very obvious that the idea of a monument to victims of communism does not appeal to them, and they want to stop it. They'll pretend it's for this reason, or pretend it's for that reason, but they want to stop it.
And they get a lot of good people following behind it because the preparation was not done enough.
But I'm telling you, it was done in a way, it was done in exactly the same way as the monument of 1812 has been done. It was done in exactly the same way as the recent memorial to Canadian firefighters was done. It was done in exactly the same way as the Maritimers Memorial has been done. I'm sorry, I disagree with you because my level of knowledge has been elevated. I am a professional volunteer by now, but I've been associated with this process, and if someone like you claims that we were not adherent to this process, I have to disagree with you. We have done so much. Look, I'll give you one example, and I finish on that, okay? In 2013, when Canadian Citizenship and Immigration Minister, as well as Minister for Multiculturalism, so Christopher Alexander and Jason Kenney stood on the land where we will build a memorial, and we made a public announcement on a Black Ribbon Day, okay, 23rd of August, and we invited all the media, so CTV, CBC, Globe, Ottawa Citizen, all of them came out, and we said, citizenship and immigration in recognition of the ethnic communities here is funding the memorial by signing an agreement with the Chair of Tribute to Liberty, Ludwik Klimkowski, and the CIC is giving us $1.5 million. All right? Public announcement, really large announcement. It's an important milestone for the project. Announcement has been made. First question being asked by Julie Van Duzen of CBC. First question goes to the minister. Minister, do you smoke marijuana like Justin Trudeau? Have you ever smoked marijuana in your life? Second question from Globe. Minister Alexander, do you like smoking marijuana? Last question. Do you guys support legalizing marijuana? Every single question asked during that event was about the topic of du jour, which is the Liberal leader Justin Trudeau smoking pot once in a while. No one cared. No one asked even one question. Why here? What's the funding? No person from the media was interested in that subject at all. So if you tell me we've made no effort to publicize this and to bring this to Canadian psyche and to Canadian awareness, I have to disagree with you. Okay?
Okay. Any more?
Many
Sure.
My first question is, well, I have to admit I don't know much about the project, although we were closely cooperating with Anna. My first question is, it's a great project having two sides, the gloomy side, making victims of communism in bold, and the side of hope, giving the tribute to liberty. Why did you make the victims in bold and not the hope side?
No, if you look at the memorial itself, the bridge is actually represents the hope. So when you climb on the top of the bridge, you're much higher than the member folks. And so you've elevated your hope, but you still pay homage and respect to the member.
But why did you make this homage more important in the project? Not giving the hope
Here
more
is why.
important?
It is well. Because there's tons and tons and tons of kids who would not buy a t-shirt with Adolf Hitler and swastika, but they see nothing wrong with Che Guevara or CCCP or hammer and sickle. So when you talk about the ideology, people are frightened because the communism is next step of the socialism, if you will. Would we agree with this?
Yes.
Okay. But there are many really solid social democratic countries and political parties around the globe that have nothing to do with communism. So the idea that one means the other is not legitimate. And people are trying to say, well, capitalism, why don't we build a memorial to victims of capitalism? All right, but then I say, how many people have run from capitalism and seek the refuge in Soviet Union, or jumped from the Berlin Wall from the west side to east side, being shot in the back while they were doing it? Right? You get my point.
Yes.
So this is not about one versus the other. which is better, capitalism or communism? It's about the memory of those who were killed in the name of communism. It's about your brothers and sisters, your mothers, fathers, people that we used to know, our parents knew. So to answer your question, I am afraid of the fact that with passing time, memory fades away. And people will, again, be somehow in a sphere of opium, longing for utopia presented by communism and communists. And to that we have to say, no, we know that that's a wrong and evil idea, because that idea produced nothing but 100 million people killed.
Speaking about the ideology, I know there are many objections. I don't know if you try to quantify different objections, maybe by mentioning in media what every kind of objection, what portion of every kind of objection takes in that whole opposition, and what is the share of ideology objection. Is it really the ideology objection, or it's a little bit of speculation?
See,
Is it logistics the most objectionable?
look, I would say this. I'd rather win someone's heart than his mind. This gentleman here, he has a strong point of view, and I can somehow try to change his way of thinking about pointing out that some facts that he read in some of the newspapers are not necessarily facts. But I sure hope I can win his heart by saying, whatever the opposition you have, this memorial is really for the memory of your family and why you came here. So what
I said from the beginning, I support the
Yeah, I get it. So to answer your question, I may be a Don Quixote and fight each and every objection. I'd rather be an inspirational person who says, isn't Canada great? This is such a wonderful country where all of us, regardless of the walk of life, creed, color, and religion, we can come together in one spot because of generosity of this country and the Canadians. And the Canadians continue to be generous today. With the Syrian refugees, we are the benefactors of this continuous generosity. So I say to you, don't forget the second half of this memorial title.
Make it bold.
Canada, a land of refuge. Right?
Yes.
It is about this, and this memorial is really to say to fellow Canadians, look, you gave us a chance. We've prospered. We're here. We're saying thank you to you by building this memorial. Good answer?
That's
Good for you. You don't belong here. This should be ready for another 6-story building with the endless corridors, with the cabinet files and the bureaucrats who come to work here. And by the way, we don't want the memorial because it will obstruct the view of the Spirit of the Canada, as if the 6-story building would not. Right? They would say, we need the building for the lawyers because we don't have one. Like we don't have 99 Sparks Street and a whole building right on the corner of Queen and Sparks, which is called Federal Court Building. So the objections are many, but as you said, madam, the inspiration for those objectives are perhaps much deeper than the location
It's obvious.
itself. And I only wish to have 24 hours every single day when I can sit in front of everyone like you and change one heart at a time when I have a chance to speak publicly, which I don't in terms of media. We have written letters to Ottawa Citizen, to Globe and Mail and other publications telling them to rectify, to correct certain statements that were made that are just simply incorrect. I'll give you one example. How much is that land worth? Right? Maybe worth 16 million, maybe 33 million, maybe 50 million. Well, why would the federal government give this piece of land to Tribute to Liberty, a private organization? Well, let's answer that. One, This piece of land belongs to federal ministry, Public Works. It always has been within the domain of Public Works, and it will remain in Public Works domain in perpetuity. No federal government, regardless if it's conservative, liberal, or NDP, would give a piece of land like this in a central location to any group. How would you put the value of this piece of land? What's the value of Peace Tower? 100 million? 200? A billion? No one knows because it's not for sale. But you put the real estate value only on the property if it's for sale. This one is not. It will never be sold to anyone. So why would we even talk about the value of this if it wasn't serving a purpose of actually elevating the cost of the memorial, right? A private group. We are a Canadian charitable organization on whose board we have representatives of different ethnic organizations. One of the key members of the board is Mr. Pavlo Brod,
Oh,
president of Ukrainian
really?
Canadian Congress.
On this
On
particular
this
board?
particular board. Another president of the president that's on the board is Teresa Garzowski, who's the president of Canadian Polish Congress. Ron Su lives in Vancouver, and he is the representative of the Korean Reunification Society, one of the largest Korean organizations. Christine Dang represents the Vietnamese community, and so on and so forth. It's not a private group. It's the group consisted of some of the leaders of the largest ethnic communities in Canada. Why no one talks about it?
How
Why?
many people do you have in your project?
You have to define your question a little bit more. What do you mean
What
by
project?
The project of building the memorial in Ottawa.
Look, there are 9 members of the board, but
How
this
many of them are Koreans?
well, you can have the board of directors has only a limited number of people. Chinese, we have a Chinese representative, but not on the board of directors.
So it's really a multicultural.
It is, sure. But look, just don't forget, guys, this is private-public partnership. Majority of funding and project management and approvals come from the federal government. It's not like we, the ethnic group Tribute to Liberty representation, can do whatever we wish, however we wish. This is done in a close cooperation with the federal government and its ministers. So when it comes to approval of design and then project management, execution, building it, all it's done through the regular procurement that it's regularly used by the federal government.
It's very location.
Sure.
And actually, I think this is the perfect location for it. And unfortunately, we can step on the fact that it provides the perfect contrast. We have the Supreme Court, the symbol of the rule of law
Yeah.
that the country runs.
Yeah.
No matter who's on the court, everything runs according to the law. Commemorating right beside it is the symbol of what happens when you no longer have the rule of law. And you have the anarchy of the rule of small group of people. It's a perfect contrast and therefore a perfect location for the monument.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, going back to what I was saying before, Minister Poirier, rather than emphasizing the importance and the symbolic nature of the location, chose to attack public services.
You're making it about him.
But that's, it publicly, that was. the
Really
point.
stand
You don't like it?
This is for me, I've never heard about it, and I don't care about that.
Yeah.
I just want this there.
I
heard about it.
No.
Not as whether
But
whenever somebody else.
What's important is that Poirier gets people's backs up.
Yours, maybe.
What about the, yeah, it's better, it's better to use.
Yeah, he's not on the board.
To me, he's
He's
a
okay.
non-entity, he's not involved in this as far as I'm concerned, we've got other issues here.
I don't like them either.
It's not okay, I don't have a problem.
I have another question.
Okay.
Guys, just.
Tone it down a bit, please. We have a question being asked here.
Not about Poilievre.
Okay. Hold on, just 1 second. Just got a question. All right.
It's more like environmentally
Yes.
architectural question.
Yeah.
Why memorial made from stone? Why not a park? Why not a bridge? Why not anything else but a stone?
Okay, so I call myself a chief juror, okay, of all the jurors that were appointed. We have received 27 international design proposals. Okay? Out of 27, the jurors have narrowed the group most suitable for competition based on different criteria: experience, budgetary ways, artistic design, and other projects that groups have done, of architects done before. That initial pool was narrowed to 6. And within the 6, if you were to go to Tribute to Liberty website, you can see each and every project in great detail. 2 of them, one of them specifically, proposed to grow a mature park on that site. But the jurors within the deliberations have decided that the memory, the essence of this has to be elevated. And it's all about the name of the memorial. It has to be about the victims. It has to be about Canada Land of Refuge. So then, as a matter of compromise between the jurors, we had to elect something that makes the best representation of what we are trying to accomplish. So let me answer that even more carefully. Today's design and its location takes about 1/3 of the whole space. Okay? So the cement, all the marble and heavy stone, that'd be 1/3 of the whole thing. 2/3 are designated for you to sit in the park and to think, to cry, to laugh, to read a book, to have lunch. This will be a place where public servants and other individuals can find a quiet place, somehow isolated from the noise of the Confederation Boulevard. So trust me when I say, when it comes to environmental assessment and the importance to somehow elevating this project, we wanted to create a place of contemplation. That's why 2/3 of the size are devoted to the park, and only 1/3 is devoted to potential gatherings of Ukrainian community, for example. The plaza itself will accommodate about 600 people at once. And when you come to this plaza, I hope, this is my dream, that every single Andrejchuk, Hladishevsky, any other will be able to touch the name on the wall of remembrance. And they will continue coming back. So the Hutsulaks, Temetries, and others, they will make their pilgrimage again and again because of the design of that segment.
So in reality, it will be the park as a tribute to liberty.
Yeah, as a whole, the project itself, look, we always, when I travel and I'm being introduced as a chair of Tribute to Liberty, not many people know who that is. But if you tell them Ludwik Klimkowski is the chair of the organization that is building a memorial to victims of communism, most of the people do know that.
Yeah, the amount of concrete has been reduced from this to this quite significantly. So now it's more the park with a memorial than a concrete plaza with some trees.
But listen, just one last final thing, and I hope you will help me with this, help us. Giving $1,000 to anyone hurts. That's a lot of money. But giving $1,000 so your family can be on a memorial for hundreds of years with the family story on it, that's a very inexpensive proposition. So I hope that you take this with you. And remember, because we are a Canadian charitable organization, we do issue tax receipts and to be able to put the mark on Canadian history by being one of the members of Wall of Remembrance is something really, really unique. Okay?
Could you just say a little bit about how you're collecting stories and what exactly are you doing with that?
So today, my dear, we are the only, really, the campaign is about gathering as many names as possible. Once we reach 1,000, it's closed. You can't add any more names. And
Meaning, once you reach 1,000
that's right.
donors.
Yes. And then that process is completed, it's finished.
What are you doing with these stories?
So then the second stage becomes where we go through the process of vetting the names and seeing who has given and why and so forth. I'll give you just a simple example.
You want people with history, some kind of application.
Look, I'll give you a specific example. You will see a name of Ludwik and Isabella Klimkowski. I'm not a victim of communism. I was born in Poland, I was a student, underground student, kind of a movement, person. But I don't consider myself a true victim. Like, I can be considered a victim because I'm not in Poland. I had to come to Canada to be free, right? But both my family and my wife's family, not only they are Sibiraks, they were sent to Gulag. My grandfather was executed by NKVD. I grew up in Poland. I grew up without knowing both of my grandfathers. One of them was killed by Gestapo. Okay? The other one was killed by Soviets. Equal opportunity, I guess. Huh? So our donation is to say, this is dedication to our family members, such and such, but because I grew up in Warsaw during the Solidarity years, I really developed a fondness for Father Popiełuszko. And Father Popiełuszko used to be known, well, Holy Father as well, but Father Popiełuszko was the chaplain of the Solidarity and the steel workers in Warsaw. Okay? And you remember this stuff, right? And in 1984, because of his activities, he was captured by secret police. He was kidnapped, driven to another city, and then dumped in the river, and he died. And then obviously they found out who has done this. And by the way, the perpetrators of that got 10, 15 years, and then were quietly released for good behavior. Today, one of them is actually a consultant for TV, makes a lot of money, and they killed, so I'm talking about myself, okay? This is our dedication. Our family wants to bring his story to public's memory. So to answer your question, our contribution to the Wall of Remembrance would be probably 1 or 2 pages of a regular, as if you were typing a Microsoft Word letter, but with links to it. So when you scan and you see Ludwik Klimkowski and you scan and you type in the name Klimkowski, you are taken to the Tribute to Ludwik website. Then you see, okay, Ludwik has given in memory of Father Popiełuszko. Here is the link to Wikipedia or other place where you can find out about Father Popiełuszko. And that way, we are creating the first Canadian depository of memory, like the Jewish community has done so well. And remember, with each and every passing year, there's less and less of survivors, and most of that stuff goes to garbage.
Yeah, it's forgotten.
So we have to, this is beautiful, that we can actually preserve that memory, and not only that, imagine, because of the positioning of this memorial, how many kids who come to Ottawa to visit the Peace Tower and Parliament buildings will actually be taken by our teachers to see that memorial. And how many of them, using the smartphone, can actually play with it, be interactive, be engaged, and whatever. And how many communities, when you're driving by, you can see, wow, tonight, there's actually red and white. Why the memorial is in red and white? Well, would be maybe for the Katyn commemoration. Why is it the yellow and blue? Right? People will ask, why is it? So then the Ukrainian community can say, well, it's for our National Independence Day, or whatever it is, right? So each and every community will have their own days of celebrations, but also education that goes with it.